Good morning, Senator. I'm
Good
Spencer
morning.
Arnold. I've got Senator Greg Walker here. I am currently, the reason for this interview is because I'm doing a social policy analysis for a bill that Senator Walker has authored for 2023 session. It is Senate Bill 408, which is the Vulnerable User Bill. So let me just start off by how would you define what a vulnerable road user is?
So the bill actually, thank you, Spencer. The bill actually defines a vulnerable road user as one of several people who are either on foot or on a cycle that could be potentially in the road pathway. It also includes a highway worker, those that have reason to be in the road for maintaining our roads. Uh, Essentially, it's just anyone who's not in a motor vehicle who, either by profession or by happenstance, happens to be near a road pathway or on the road itself.
Okay, thank you. So, what exactly? I briefly mentioned before that there was a bill that predated this one in the 2022 session that was authored by Senator J.D. Ford and then co-authored by Senator Rodney Pohl. The provision for that was that it provides that it is a criminal offense if a person commits a moving traffic offense that results in a serious bodily injury or death of a vulnerable road user. Apparently, that bill never made it across the floor. I think they tried to in the 2022 special session, never saw the light of day, and then it just disappeared. How is your bill different from that?
I believe Senate Bill 48 limits the consequences to suspension of a license, and if I remember right, it's also uh, if I have a vehicle that's titled in my name and I've got a suspended license, uh, many of us are aware that there's already a problem of unlicensed motorists that continue to drive. So it also goes to the point of those licensed motor vehicles cannot be registered in my name if I'm the operator of those motor vehicles, as an incentive again, because now I can't get plated, and so at least there's some indication on my vehicle. Unless I steal someone's license plates or go to some other criminal behavior, that I am not supposed to be on the road in this car. So it takes those two approaches.
Okay, basically, so if you make that violation, the law turns you into a vulnerable road user
The
yourself.
law, exactly. And I would argue if more people would get on a bike once in a while or try to walk near a roadway, they might be a little more sensitive to the issue of inattention on the road. Now, we got to admit, part of the problem are inattentive cyclists and inattentive pedestrians as well. But highway workers, they really don't have a choice. They're there by trade, and um, a lot of the responsibility is still going to fall on the person in the heavy, multi-thousand-pound vehicle, as opposed to the person who's out there and exposed. But yeah.
So, just comparing the 173, I know you're not completely versed in it. You were not co-sponsored for that bill, and neither Ford nor Poll are co-sponsored for this one. Knowing that now that you know that this bill is out there, do you see yourselves collaborating with those other two senators?
So this is a bill that I've debated bringing back. We're entering a short session next cycle. I have a very limited profile, the number of bills I'm able to file. Um, I already have two that I have intention of filing and drafting and preparing for the session. So that anyone listening knows that this is a 2023 bill, but we have completed the 2023 session. So that bill is as dead as the 2022 bill that was introduced by Senator Ford. If I, in my inventory, decide to go forward, I'll certainly talk to these two. Um, I don't know, but what the same interested parties reached out to them, also reached out to me, thinking, maybe let's try someone in the majority party and see if they're having any better chance of getting a hearing. It passing bills is like making sausage. You don't want to watch it happen, but sometimes changes in who might chair a committee may have something to do with whether a bill gets a hearing one year or not. And it's not uncommon at all for bills to be introduced multiple years before they begin to get traction. And so, hope springs eternal.
Thank you. So, can you give me a little bit of historical background on your bill? Even though it's dead, just give us an idea of why you were interested in doing this, why vulnerable road user bill, and give us kind of like a background of like how it came to
Yeah.
be.
So I would say, as a road user myself, or a vulnerable road user, I fall in that category when I go cycling. It is a hobby of mine. I don't remember now who encouraged me specifically to reach out and do this bill, but I think it came from their knowledge that at least I'm on a bicycle on occasion. So by my own uh, observation that I know that as a cyclist, I have to be very defensive. I operated a motor vehicle now for about 45 years of my life. I kind of think I know what I'm doing, but I know that I do take a different approach to being on the road on the bicycle as opposed to the car, because I feel like when I ride, this is a personal observation, that I'm the one in charge of my safety. Um, there's just not an emphasis on having a full knowledge of the spectrum of vehicles that might be out there, or pedestrians. And I feel like it really falls on me. But the other piece is the data clearly indicates that we are getting sloppier on the road for whatever reason. I'm not sure I can pin down all of it. I think just Indianapolis, the number of I think this is just fatalities from 2021 to 2022 of either a pedestrian or a cyclist increased by 50% in 1 year. I don't remember where I got that statistic, but that's I think it's largely distracted driving. We've got laws in Indiana that try to address that as well. I'm a bad guy because on the bicycle, if someone is passing me, or I'm meeting them, and I'm fairly confident that they're studying down around their knees, they're probably on a phone. And especially if they've got their windows down, I'll yell things like "eyes up" and startle drivers, trying to catch their attention. It's clear that I may not be in danger at that moment, but I also, from my road sense, don't think they know I'm on the road, and that can lead to problems. I want them to be aware that there are others besides these four-wheeled vehicles. There's other conveyances, there's other people. And so I guess say it's a personal observation together with the data that says we've got to get folks' attention somehow. I've always believed, and I think most of us recognize, driving is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not a constitutional provision. You shall be able to drive a car. And I feel like if you have that responsibility, take that responsibility, you should act responsibly.
I really appreciate you saying that, because one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for, somebody who works in social work, we oftentimes talk about populations that are marginalized versus privileged, and in that light, cyclists or any vulnerable road user is going to fall under a marginalized population, and motorists would be their corresponding privileged population. And it's simply from the fact that motorists can literally take the life of somebody who is on a bicycle or walking along. And so that creates a power dynamic on the road that causes a little bit of social injustice. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't
one,
say in every case, but I would agree
yeah,
that when you have, if we have a bad day and we beat each other on the road, I go to the emergency room and you go to the auto repair shop,
right.
maybe. And so there is a power balance, if you want to call it that. There's a disproportionate consequence for sure on the vulnerable road user, and that's why the definition says they're vulnerable. And I don't think that that's the intention for motorists to have driving privileges that include running over people in front of their path. So it's not always a social imbalance of power, but in many cases we have to recognize that we do, with an underprivileged class, they may not have driving privileges for reasons of they don't have the resources, or they may have also suffered motor laws that prevent them from driving. And so we certainly don't want to marginalize any of them who's that they're already bearing that consequence. We don't need to run over them as well. That's not
Yeah,
justice.
there's definitely some intersectionality between people of
Oh, I think so.
socioeconomics. So, I mean, it's absolutely a marginalized person. As soon as they get on a bicycle, they become even more marginalized, or have the potential to become more marginalized.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my stance on it. So, the I wanted to touch base on vehicular manslaughter. So there is a law, I'm assuming, in Indiana that you can be charged with vehicular manslaughter.
That's
So
correct.
why does it seem that that never rarely seems to happen when someone is on a bicycle? I can think of one example. I cannot remember his name, but I believe it was Frank, who was worked at Bicycle Garage Indy on 86th Street. He was crossing 86th Street, going to work. Somebody ran a red light, and as far as I'm aware of, like the person that ran that red light, I killed him. As far as I'm aware, is that person never received any sort of vehicular manslaughter charges.
Mhm.
Why do you think that is?
Indiana and most jurisdictions, actually, this is just a state problem, but it's a national issue. Um, a prosecuting attorney has a lot of discretion over which charges to bring based upon the evidence. Um, I think that in a general sense, there's still a prevailing attitude that cyclists are road hazards themselves, and that anyone who would be cycling to work is actually invited a certain amount of risk because they are a rolling road hazard. And there are many, many motorists who view that bicycles should have no place on public roads. And so, uh, all the onus, even though there was an automated signal that was violated, all the onus would fall on that bicyclist. And you're the one to put yourself out there, so you pay the price. I don't hold that attitude, but I can't say it's not out there. And it's just a matter of limited resources, to be blunt about it. Um, if we worked hard at it enough as prosecuting attorneys, we could probably end up putting about 2/3 of Indiana behind bars. There's always something we violate, and this is not seen as a crime of violence, but it's a crime of um, inattention, perhaps. And I think people's sympathies there are greater than other criminal activity. I think there's lots of reasons. We're a society where the motor vehicle prevails as far as our conveyance in most cities in the United States. And, we can look in other countries and see that's not necessarily the case. And they've done a better job of finding out how to do road sharing and how to even separate cyclists and pedestrians from the flow of traffic better than we do. So there are systemic problems in how we design roads and cities and intersections. These intersections, this is just a personal observation as a cyclist. These intersections where you come to a four-way stop and you feel like it's a football field's length to the other side of the road, and you're looking for a place to clear safety, and you're trying to follow the rules of the road. A lot of drivers don't know that you are subject to the rules of the road either. And they want to wave you through in the middle of oncoming traffic and things that, look, I'm trying to hear and manage my my lane responsibility the same as I would if I was in a car. And then other motorists don't react in the same way. They don't see you as the same, taking a turn at a four-way stop or whatever it is. And honestly, there are cyclists too that abuse that. And, how many times have you seen a cyclist or a pedestrian get charged for jaywalking or for blowing a stop sign? That's also pretty rare. We just kind of have conceded that there's only so much we can do. And, if you don't feel personally responsible for your own life, passing a law is probably not going to change that attitude too much. So, we can do what we can, but it's still just a matter of people interacting in either reckless or negligent ways, or just, common inattention. People get distracted. I get distracted driving too. I'll admit it. It happens.
The goal of your bill would essentially be to deter negligent driving, more or less, right?
Yeah.
Or reckless driving.
Yes.
Um, Based on what you just said, would you think that more mass market campaigns, educating, kind of social change campaigns, do you think that would be more beneficial for changing the way we interact?
If I had my druthers, I would combine some messaging on road safety with an effort to design/redesign roads that give pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists some more clear direction on how they should behave on the road. I do think sometimes it's a matter of people don't know how to treat a pedestrian or a cyclist. I mean, obviously, you don't run over them, but they really don't engage in the rules of the road. And when you learn to drive, maybe your parents taught you, or maybe you went to driver's ed or something. We each kind of take away our own style and our own understanding of how we interact on the road. And every day in my car, I meet motorists, and I think, I don't know that they really understand what they're supposed to be doing out here. It happens. So if we could just wave the magic wand, I really think we'd be a lot more effective, because who's thinking of the consequences when they're not giving attention to driving behind the wheel? There's a lot of single car accidents that are also the result of distracted driving, inattentive driving. And, again, if you don't care for yourself well enough to stay in your lane and stop hitting telephone poles, I don't think, losing your license is going to be a huge incentive, but that's the intent. And I mean, if you can curb some of that 50% growth, I was reading that recently we saw a 50% increase in just fatalities in just Marion County from 2021 and 2022 of cyclists and pedestrians. And you got 50% growth in a problem. It's time to be addressing it somehow. So we can
You
come
bring
at
up
it.
a good point.
We can come out at
Um,
all directions at the same time too. I think would be probably the ultimate.
I think the pandemic spurred, and there's nationwide, there's a lot of statistics that support that cycling as both a hobby and as a means of transportation has grown significantly. I mean, bike stores sold out of bikes. Like it blew up. And I think it has kind of subsided, but there is the governor has allocated millions of dollars of funds to cultivate rail trails. It's expected to grow. Do you think that in and of itself will take cause lawmakers to take more interest in a vulnerable road user bill?
Perhaps. I don't think this, because there's an initiative to expand bicycle travel, and recognize that that's still based largely on the recreational value rather than the transportation value. I think what would be more effective in terms of road safety would be an emphasis on the things we already talked about: clear, delineated places for cyclists and motorists to interact, construction of new roads and designs of new roads that allow for more defined intersections and more defined rules of engagement between the two drivers. Um, the recreational aspect, I think, helps raise awareness in general. I like rail to trails. I think they're neat, but I ride through town too, and I go to meetings on a bicycle. I'll get some funny looks once in a while, but I'll use a bike for transportation, absolutely. And we don't have a lot of things that are encouraging that mindset like you might in let's say European cities, many of them, for example, but other parts of the world too. It's just it's the American way is to get behind the wheel of that car and go. It's our freedom, it's our personality. There's a lot of culture wrapped up in all this too. Don't discount that.
Sure. All right. So I have three more questions. Two of them are kind of related. Strategies, let's just say for 2024, you do decide to come up with another version of a vulnerable road user bill. What would be your strategy for getting that passed?
Uh, I I just know that there are several transitions within the General Assembly in the 2024 cycle or session. We've had retirements and unfortunately even a recent passing of one of our members. And so some of the committee chairmanship responsibilities are going to shuffle around. So the first thing I would do is identify as soon as I can who's the new chairman of criminal and corrections, and see what their appetite is for hearing something like this. My transportation chair currently probably has some sympathy, but I had hoped the bill might go to his committee. I thought I maybe had a better chance. So I can also work on the leadership team. Essentially makes a determination of where every bill filing goes for its second hearing. Now, the rules of engagement in the Senate can be maybe a little traditional or kooky, but you have first hearing where a bill is read across the desk in front of the whole body. That is so perfunctory. No one's even paying attention to the fact that that bill has been read across the desk. But it really starts to gain light of day when it goes to a committee chairman who then considers, him or her thinks, do I want to give this bill a hearing and give it a public testimony? And am I willing to help move that bill forward? And committee chairs do sway, obviously by their selection of which bills get heard, but they can also sway and try to bring their members together on this is a bill worthy of our consideration and so on. So I need to figure out who the chair is going to be if it changes, and I think it's going to. I'm not sure about that yet. And then my next plan of attack would be try to rally a couple of the members on the committee. Some of the chairmen say, hey, look, here's the 20 bills that have been assigned, and we're going to hear 12 of them. And then they throw them out to the committee members. And I'll say that's usually just those in the majority party. Unfortunately, that's, again, part of the rules of the unwritten rules. But they may distribute us around and say, hey, any bills here that you have an appetite for, or any you just like to squash and not even mess with this year. And they may get a bite at helping determine what that bill calendar looks like.
Okay.
And take it from there.
Thank you. So what would you say? I mean, that goes hand in hand with this other question, but what would you say would be the obstacles besides the parliamentary issues?
Um, the obstacles are always resources, cost, those who give consideration to any kind of now this bill doesn't have a criminal penalty, but if you were to have a criminal penalty, that always raises the stakes substantially when you try to increase criminal penalties, because one of the unfortunate truths is that the state may pass a law in which bearing the responsibility of enforcement and then carrying out any kind of a criminal charge is borne by the counties. And the counties are often subject to budget limitations themselves, and they have prosecutors that have got caseloads that they can't manage already, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of inherent barriers within people's time and talents and interest in, you can pass the law and still there not be a single prosecution as a result of the law passage. And I've seen that happen, where people have felt like having the law on the books itself did create enough of a disincentive and an opportunity to inform, engage people, educate the public, that they were looking for a change of behavior. And I can think of laws specifically right now that are, to think about this going to a full prosecution, I can't imagine, but it's out there and people are aware of it. And so what we really want is people doing the right thing for the right reason. But if, threat of jail is enough to change some people's behavior, then let's give it a try. And I already covered it. It's got limited effect. I concede that, as does the chair of a committee whose sole role in the General Assembly is to hear bills about enhancing criminal penalties where we already have, a law on the books, quote unquote.
Sure. So my last question is, for anybody who's watching this, who's a cyclist, vulnerable road user, what can we do? What can we do to help? What can we do to advocate?
You would think this is maybe trite, but I would even suggest a letter writing campaign, not necessarily to the chair of criminal and corrections. The bill may go somewhere else this year, but your own legislator, and let your own legislature know that he or she has many people who are interested within their communities in an issue like this, and you'd like them to be aware that if a bill comes out, that you'll be watching for that, and that you will be keeping your legislator informed on the movement of the bill, and if they're on a committee, that bill is being heard. But those letter writing campaigns, if people get 10 pieces of mail on one subject, that's a landslide. And you think about a typical Senate district in Indiana is about 126,000 persons. 10 letters doesn't sound like a lot, but it catches the eye of a legislator for sure.
Do you feel, as a senator, do you pay more attention to phone calls, or do you pay more attention to snail mail letters?
I don't know that one weighs more than the other. I am more inclined to write a personal response, and I'll even handwrite a response. I have to admit, maybe I'm a little old school, but if I get a really well-written letter and the penmanship's good, and I feel like someone really put their heart into it, I'm as likely to write a personal response in my hand to that as I would anything. And if it's an email, you probably will get an email back, but not necessarily, depending upon, the stuff that's like, go to the online clearinghouses that, hey, you give us your name and we'll send the letter in your name. Those don't get a lot of attention generally. Be personal,
Sure.
be real.
Yeah. Also, so one of the things that happens is once a bill is first addressed, it almost automatically goes to a committee for a review, correct?
If it's going to move forward in the process, yes.
So would you think that it would be a beneficial strategy to not only contact our personal legislators, would it be beneficial to target those committees and send the people in that committee snail mail letters, contact them to say that you support it?
It certainly cannot hurt. I would begin the thing about your legislators is we are not in session. So they're more inclined to have time to read mail. Again, if you got mail, if 10% of your constituents wrote you once a month, that's 12,000 pieces of mail to read in a month, So, as I said, that tends to catch your attention because the volume is not that high. People don't write that much. But I would certainly start with your legislator, and I wouldn't have to wait until January to do it, because that's when the mail volume really jumps. Send those notes out now and let people know that you're concerned about the issue, and I would say too, if you write them, let them know that, hey, in 2022 there was a bill that would help address this, and there was one in 2023. Keep an eye out, and we'll let you know if there's a 2024 bill or not. So kind of, if legislators know people are concerned enough to do their homework and watch a bill, I think that's leaves an impression as well.
Great. Well, this has been incredibly informative, and I can't tell you how much, and I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who feel the same way, but we appreciate you taking the time this morning to answer a few questions.
I'd like to feel safer on the road myself when I go out. So I hope this helps generate some interest.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.